Hello biology students, let's get you ready for tomorrow's biochemistry test. Today we'll review atoms. Those are the basic unit of matter. Elements, there are 6 that are most common in living things, including carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. With atoms, there are 3 little subatomic particles. Protons are positively charged and they're located in the nucleus. Electrons are negatively charged. They are going to be orbiting the outside of the atom. And the neutrons are going to have no charge, and they are also in the nucleus of the atom. Electrons are involved in bonding with covalent bonds. 2 different atoms are going to share electrons. With ionic bonds, we'll have an attraction between a positive and negatively charged atom, and they're going to give or take electrons to become stable. Hydrogen bonds is what I'm going to show you below, and that's between the hydrogen of one molecule and another negatively charged end of another molecule. So here on the water molecules, I've labeled the hydrogens in blue, the oxygens in red. Hydrogens are positively charged, oxygens are negatively charged. So I'm showing that attraction there between the positives and negatives. And we see that water clearly has 2 ends, a positive end and a negative end. And hydrogen bonds are what occurs between those 2 ends. So the negative charge on one water is attracted to the positive charge on the other water molecules surrounding it. Polarity is simply the fact that water has that positive and negative end. That allows it to be a great solvent, so it's really, really good at dissolving other substances. This is good for us because it allows nutrients and vital salts and things like that to move throughout our body through water in our blood. Adhesion, remember, think of adhesive. It's the attraction of water to something different. So this would be the attraction of water molecules to a window. That's the fact that they cling. It also allows water to move through our capillaries and in the roots of plants. Cohesion is between 2 different water molecules. So one water is attracted to a nearby water. This allows us to have surface tension on our lakes, which allows some water bugs to be able to walk across water. Now let's talk about carbohydrates. They're made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The simplest form are monosaccharides. They're the building blocks. If you put 2 together, it forms a disaccharide. And if you put 3 or more together, we call it a polysaccharide. Carbohydrates are really good for energy, and they can also build different structures. When we combine 2 monosaccharides to form a disaccharide, I'll just give the example here of forming table sugar. You're going to draw those 2, and you'll notice that they've each got an OH group. In order to get them to stick together, we remove one H and an OH, which forms water. Then they're joined up, and we call this dehydration synthesis because we've formed water as a byproduct of putting those 2 together. Next, we'll move on to proteins, and proteins are made of nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Sometimes we also put in a sulfur. They are chains of these little building blocks called amino acids, which you have a picture of there. There are 20 different varieties of amino acids, and they just change at something called the R group. So I'll fill in the chemistry here. There was one error on your chemistry right up there, but the H you can erase, and that whole unit is just called the R group. That's what changes depending on which amino acid you see. The 4 levels of protein structure are primary, first degree, which is a simple chain, second degree, which is secondary structure. It can either form a pleated sheet or a simple helix, which is like a twist. Your tertiary or third degree structure forms a glob. It's where the protein folds in on itself. And your 4th degree or quaternary structure is where 2 proteins are going to fold around each other. Within proteins, we also have enzymes, and enzymes are catalysts. They speed up reactions by lowering the amount of energy needed. So the example that I gave in class is that it's easier to get somewhere with a motorcycle than it is with a bike. It's faster and it requires less energy. That's what enzymes do for us. But enzymes are sensitive. If you have too much heat or the wrong pH, either too acidic or too basic, they can denature. They change shape and they no longer work the way that they were supposed to. Enzymes have a certain part of them that fits one specific substrate. That's called the active site. The substrate is what they're supposed to go to work on. When they break that down, we make it into a product. Our next biomolecule is lipids. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and sometimes phosphorus. The categories are fats, either saturated, which are solid at room temperature, or unsaturated, which are liquid at room temperature. They're good at storing energy and also providing our bodies with insulation. Phospholipids are used in cell membranes, and we're going to talk more about those below. The third category is steroids. These act as hormones for our bodies, and good examples of that would be cholesterol or your sex hormones. Phospholipids are going to look kind of goofy. They've got this head, which is made of glycerol and phosphate, and then they've got tails, two little fatty acids attached to the bottom. The head, which is made of glycerol and phosphate, is polar, and it loves water. The hydrophobic tail hates water because it doesn't have a charge on it, and water can't dissolve it. All cell membranes are made of these phospholipids, and they arrange themselves in something called a bilayer, two levels of phospholipids. The last category of macromolecule are the nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. They're both built of nucleotides, and a nucleotide is three parts: sugar, phosphate, and base. The sugar looks like a hexagon, the phosphate contains P and O, and the base contains a lot of nitrogens in rings. The function of these is to be a genetic blueprint and cell instructions. To wrap it all up, why do we even care about these molecules? It's because they help keep us balanced. Carbohydrates balance out our blood sugar and our energy levels. Proteins are responsible for a lot of repair in our cells and in our tissues. They also speed up reactions when they act as enzymes. Lipids provide us with long-term energy storage. They allow cells to filter out toxins, and as we mentioned earlier, insulation helps us regulate our temperature. And nucleic acids, they control all cell functions. That's kind of important. Good luck on tomorrow's test. See you soon.